Subscribe or they will haunt you. People that do autopsies. What's the weirdest thing that you have found that didn't have anything to do with the person's death? I worked as a pathology assistant. My boss once found a 6-inch builder's nail in a chap's thigh. He'd died on site after an accident, but the nail was all healed over, even where it had nicked the bone, so it must have been there a few years. A paramedic buddy showed me pictures of an accident where the guy was carrying a nail gun up a ladder to a roof and accidentally drove a nail through his pocket, the iPhone in the pocket, and into his femur. The hospital did imaging to ensure it wasn't going to blow an artery, and then just yanked it out. UK gang member's mother died of a heart attack during a home invasion. Aggravated burglary. 87 years old. Gang had burst in looking for drugs and money. No signs of assault, but the circumstances required a full examination to be sure nothing suspicious had occurred. During the post-mortem, 2 ounces of smack found in her anus. I was once in a mental health facility for only a short amount of time, and I met a woman whose daughter passed away from a drug overdose and had been upset at her for selling her grandmother's necklace for what she thought was drugs. But when the autopsy came back, it was found in her stomach. Apparently she was swallowing the same necklace for years, and I can imagine why someone would do that. You could always look on the brighter side and think that the necklace meant so much to her. She kept swallowing it so that any dodgy dealings wouldn't be able to steal it from her to pay for drugs. I was volunteering at the coroner's office and the doc pulled a very large intact avocado pit out of a man's stomach. We all kind of looked at it and went, huh. Cause of death was a heart attack. While completing the post-autopsy repair for a gentleman, I found a plastic ladle tucked under the ribs. It was probably left by some poor autopsy technician who got yelled at for losing the good ladle. I offered to send it back to the coroner, but they never returned my calls. I wouldn't necessarily say this is a weird thing, but once during an autopsy, I had just put the body onto the table on their stomach and the person had explosive poop. Luckily, the doc who was standing right beside them moved in time, or else they would have been shot with poop. We didn't think it was ever going to stop. Incidental finding of a toothpick lodged in the small intestine. Spoke with a pathologist at a conference. During her training at the medical examiner's office, they were doing an autopsy on a body that was found by a river. They did a court and something looked funny about his gut. When they opened him up, his stomach moved. It was a snake that had burrowed inside his body. It struck and bit one of the techs before they realized what was going on. Other causes of death, impending ones. Malignancies that weren't diagnosed, hepatitis, occult bleeding, etc. Once found full-blown metastatic stomach cancer in a college kid that died in a bar fight that escalated. It was pretty remarkable. This happened to both my grandpa and my great-aunt. My grandpa had an aneurysm on his jugular that could burst at any moment. My great-aunt had cancer that they only found on the autopsy. Pneumonia took them both first. My friend does this autopsies, and he said that he found 24 screws in the large intestine of a 75-year-old woman. The weirdest part is she died of a heart attack while in the shower. There was no possible explanation other than she was suffering from pica. A professor was explaining to us the brain's ability to compensate and said there was a case. I believe the person had died of old age, of someone missing an entire hemisphere of the brain. In its place was one big tumor. There were no signs of symptoms of this throughout the patient's lifetime. Pennies. Hundreds of pennies, nearly $6 worth inside the skin all over the arms and legs. Deceased was a hermit, lived alone, ordered out for every meal. Apparently he'd been surgically implanting pennies in his skin for years. No fucking clue why. This has haunted me the most out of all the posts so far. I was an assistant back in the day, and once a man who died in drive-by was brought, and when examined we found that he had coke in his ass. I'm a nurse and don't partake in autopsies, but help get the body ready for one, and we had a patient/body who had a body bag tag tattooed around his big toe, had it done about 10 years prior. The tattoo had the part named OB and date of death with a blank line, and the family had filled in the tattoo with the PTS date of death and time. Did pathology at hospital in college, and one person had green organs that smelled like grape Jolly Ranger. No joke, apparently it's caused by a not so uncommon bacteria that only does that. Buddy told me he found a pair of dentures in someone's thigh. Didn't say a word to anyone about it for a couple years either. Why wouldn't he mention that? Seems like something that should be documented, even if random. A secret of the universe only he felt entrusted to keep. Guy called his ex-wife, told her he was ending it all, had a gun, drove out to the middle of nowhere and died of a heart attack. We couldn't believe it either. During one of my anatomy labs we did a thoracic dissection on an elderly gentleman. The skin showed moderate yet long healed scarring that when drawn back revealed small slivers of copper. The cadavers are only identified by a serial no, but judging by his tats he was a military man, so presumably old war wounds. Not necessarily weird, but interesting nonetheless. I'm not a me, but growing up, my best friend's dad was the county coroner/me. An old shut-in died from natural causes, and his body was found a few weeks after he passed. During the autopsy, the coroner found what appeared to be thin copper wire running the length of the decedent's arms, legs, and torso. It was embedded under the skin, with a single point or outlet emerging at the base of the neck. The man had no family, so no one had a clue how the wires got there, or why. Elderly pensioner died alone in his home. Not suspicious at all. Small mobile phone, flip phone, found in his rectum. No explanation ever determined. Maybe he called it with a separate phone, so it would vibrate at it. Well, I woke up, and my karma has been multiplied by 5. Thanks so much for the gold and the other awards I don't know the name of. It's very exciting. I'm late to the party here. I used to take x-rays in the morgue for suspicious deaths, murders, etc. One time we were doing an abdomen x-ray on a guy that was found in a golf course pond. After rolling him on his side to gather the plate, a live frog wriggled out of his butt. The morgue tech caught him and put him into a specimen jar. He took some debris from the bag and put it in the jar and poked holes in the lid. One of my coworkers googled the type of frog and confirmed that he was native to the area. He then biked him back and released him into his pond at the end of the day. I doubt any of his frog friends believed his story,